to another edition of One Saturday Morning. I am your host, Darrell Dukes. Kicking off One Saturday Morning is Steve Bannon. Now, before we start taping this edition of One Saturday Morning, we got word that Rick Perry, also part of Donald Trump's administration, has taken over the seat that was originally held by Mr. Barron for the National Security Council. Again, this is a developing story, and we'll have more updates on that on the next edition of One Saturday Morning. However, let's show you this CBS News report about Mr. Bannon's seat being stripped from it and to give it to somebody else. Take a look.
We are following a major staffing change inside the Trump administration. CBS News has learned that the chief strategist to the president, Steve Bannon, has been removed from the president's National Security Council. Let's get right to CBS News political director Steve Shigaris, who joins us now from Washington. Hey, Steve.
Hey, how are you?
So what can you tell us?
Well, I'd caution using the words removed. We don't know the motivation for all this. All we know is that there was a new memorandum put into the Federal Register today that shows a different makeup of the National Security Council Principals Committee. As you may remember, when Mike Flynn was the National Security Advisor in January, they put together a list of members of this Principals Committee, which included Steve Bannon and didn't include some other high-level intelligence officials. Now that H.R. McMaster has replaced Mike Flynn as the National Security Advisor, they've rejiggered this Principals Committee. They've taken Bannon off there and restored those high-level officers, intelligence officers, to this Principals Committee. That's all we can tell you right now. We don't really know the motivation behind all of this. We just know that this was sort of slipped in a memorandum that was not made public. Really, it was just discovered by journalists, and so we'll get some more reporting on this throughout the day and try to figure out why this is happening the way it's happened.
And Steve, certainly the president's decision to put Bannon on the Security Council to begin with was met with criticism from both sides of the aisle. Talk about why that move was so controversial.
Well, it just was sort of unprecedented to have a guy in writing codified that a guy at his level, a political guy, being added to this permanent principals committee. It just got a lot of people who were in the intelligence world sort of raised a lot of eyebrows and said, why are you bringing your political guy onto the principals committee? And they had to answer a lot of questions for that. Now they're sort of reverting back to the traditional lineup on the principals committee. Again, we don't know the reason why for this. We do know that there's been a change in the National Security Advisor, and this National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, is setting up the National Security Council in his mold. And so, hopefully throughout the day we'll find out why McMaster made this change.
Yeah, Steve, it's sort of interesting. I mean, and this is just sort of like reading the tea leaves here, because the president took so much heat for the decision to have Bannon sit in on those council meetings. The fact that it's reported that he probably never attended any of the meetings, it sort of makes you wonder. Now, in the report that we have here from Bloomberg, they say that a White House official says Bannon was placed on the committee in part, I'm quoting from the article here, to monitor Trump's first national security advisor, Michael Flynn. I mean, what could that be about?
Yeah, it's a good question. Again, I don't want to speculate on the reasons why any of this is happening. All we can really say is, I think the most curious part of this is that it was reset. What we're finding out today in terms of Bannon not being on that principals committee, it's being reset in a very, very quiet way, and we're discovering this mainly because these are things that are put into the Federal Register, and they are public record. But there was no fanfare at all from the White House on this. So we'll figure out throughout the day, I think, the reasons why this is all happening.
Yeah, very interesting move. Our Steve Shigaris in Washington. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thanks.
Next on One Saturday Morning, Susan Rice. If you remember her, she was part of former President Obama's administration, and she has been accused of whitewashing. Now, whitewashing is something new to all of us, but if you are a in-depth political junkie, the term whitewashing isn't that new. For that and more, let's toss it over to ABC News.
Now we're going to dig into that story about Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice and the questions over how and why she unmasked Trump administration officials named in intelligence reports. Now, that term unmasking is new for most of us. Here's how it works. When the U.S. spies on a foreign target, an American may get caught up in the surveillance. Those names are not revealed. John Smith becomes U.S. person. But national security officials can ask for the names to be unmasked if they feel it's necessary to understand the intelligence. Unmasking is legal. Rules are in place for how it's done. Leaking an unmasked name to the press is not legal. ABC's Cecilia Vega's covering the story from the White House. Good morning, Cecilia.
George, good morning to you. And there is a strong denial from Susan Rice. She said she did not leak any of those unmasked names, and she said she did nothing illegal. But Democrats and Republicans see this one very differently. The left sees Susan Rice as a scapegoat. The right sees her as the smoking gun that proves the president's wiretapping claims. This morning, allies of President Trump joining in a chorus of anger. 3 Republican members of Congress sending this letter to Senate and House Intelligence Committees demanding that President Obama's former national security advisor be called to testify, saying that Susan Rice's behavior appears negligent at best and criminal at worst. To them, she could be the smoking gun that proves President Obama wiretapped President Trump. But from Rice, a firm denial.
I leaked nothing to nobody and never have and never would.
She does admit that she asked to unmask the identities of Americans picked up by surveillance. But she says it was all part of her job.
This is not anything political has been alleged. That's absolutely false. We can't be passive consumers of this information and do our jobs effectively to protect the American people.
Rice would not name names, but sources tell ABC News that as the intelligence community investigated Russia's election meddling, in some cases, Trump campaign and transition officials were caught up in surveillance. Rice requesting their identities. Republican lawmakers outraged.
So if this is what people are saying it is, this is totally unusual and I think totally wrong and inappropriate.
And Senator Rand Paul tweeting, "Smoking gun found." But Rice says there was nothing illegal and there was no wiretapping.
The intelligence community, the director of the FBI, has made that very clear. There was no such collection, surveillance on Trump Tower or Trump individuals.
So an adamant denial there. Another Republican calls Rice the typhoid Mary of the Obama administration. Surprisingly, the White House has been pretty restrained on this one. George, Sean Spicer calling these reports about Rice and unmasking troubling.
Okay, Cecilia, thanks very much. Let's bring in John Avlon, editor-in-chief of the Daily Beast, also author of the new book, Washington's Farewell, Founding Fathers' Warning to Future Generations. Thanks for coming in. John, let's try to unpack this whole unmasking controversy, if it is indeed a controversy. As Cecilia said in the piece, unmasking legal, proper, routine for national security officials. If that information were leaked, that would be a problem.
Yes. That's exactly right. But there's not evidence at this point. It also goes to the intent of any unmasking. What's happening here is obviously it's the politicization of national security, an attempt to deflect from the focus of much of the energetic point on Capitol Hill right now. It's the FBI investigation about possible Russian contact with the Trump transition and campaign. But this is being pumped up by partisan media as something at least equivalent to validate the president's claims.
And so expect a lot more. Nothing to do with the president's claims about wiretapping.
Nothing to do with wiretapping at all. But that distinction is without a difference to most hardcore partisans right now who are desperately trying to either defend the president or deflect away from the main investigation.
Also in Washington, it's a busy, busy week in Washington right now. It's going on right now on the floor of the Senate. You see this filibuster by the Democrats. Jeff Merkley, the senator from Oregon, is right there talking. He's been talking through the night about Judge Gorsuch. Now, this is over, though. Come Friday, Judge Gorsuch is going to be Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch. I guess the question is, will this change in the rules, this nuclear option, what kind of impact will it have down the road?
Look, and that's the real story. Cut to the chase. You know, Mitch McConnell pulls the nuclear option. Gorsuch becomes a Supreme Court Justice. But it's the change of raising that level to a Supreme Court Justice. That is a change in precedent. And Democrats knew that endgame when they opposed him. And here's the real problem. The standard, as you know, isn't whether you disagree with the judge. It's whether he's qualified to sit. And he presented himself as a conservative but a conciliator. And that makes it very difficult to hold that line. So now the nuclear option applies to Supreme Court justices. Will the filibuster stand in other areas?
We will see how it plays out. Ivanka Trump stepping out a little bit. She's now an official White House employee, gave an interview just yesterday where she took on that ad in Saturday Night Live where, you know, the perfume ad, complicit. Here was her answer.
If being complicit is wanting to be a force for good and to make a positive impact, then I'm complicit.
Now, it has been reported that she has been a moderating influence on her father. She also said she disagrees with him at times. But now you've got the situation where Ivanka and her husband, Jared, in many ways, the two most powerful people next to the president in the White House.
Yeah, that's a problem within most American standards. I mean, it's nepotism. It's a princeling phenomenon. And obviously, that's not the definition of complicit. The idea is if you're going to stand for certain values, you're going to fight for them in the White House. And how did you get there? And if it's purely based on bloodline, not personal experience, that's a problem outside America's best traditions. So that's something that they're going to have to confront and prove themselves in the line of fire.
John Evelyn, thanks very much
Thank
for coming in.
Next on Saturday morning, Bill O'Reilly, who once again is caught with his pants down, literally, because he is being accused of sexual harassment at the 21st Century Fox News, at Fox News. And let's just say he has made settlements up to $13 million to make sure that this stage goes away. As a result of that, several key advertisers have pulled their advertisements off of O'Reilly's 8 p.m. hour on Fox News. So for that and more, check this out.
Fox News host Bill O'Reilly faces growing fallout over newly revealed harassment allegations. Nearly 20 major advertisers, including Allstate, BMW, and T. Rowe Price, have pulled commercials from his top-rated program. The companies are reacting to a report that O'Reilly Factor host and his network paid millions to women over accusations of sexual harassment or other inappropriate conduct. Anna Werner is outside Fox News headquarters in New York. Anna, good morning.
Good morning, Charlie. Fox News chairman Roger Ailes was forced to resign last year amid similar allegations, and Fox promised a zero-tolerance policy against sexual harassment. Now, with this new spotlight on Bill O'Reilly, the network is facing increased pressure on itself and its most prominent anchor.
Caution. You are about to enter the no spin zone.
No spin and no comment Tuesday night from Bill O'Reilly after a cascade of advertiser defections forced his program, The O'Reilly Factor, to fill many of its commercial slots with filler ads and promos for other Fox shows.
Back in the book segment tonight, what the heck just happened?
Over the weekend, the New York Times reported that O'Reilly and Fox News reached a number of big money settlements related to allegations of sexual harassment or other inappropriate behavior by Mr. O'Reilly.
We found that there have been 5 women who've received settlements, either from Mr. O'Reilly or Fox News, and those settlements totaled about $13 million.
The report led to a revolt by many of the show's advertisers, including Mercedes-Benz, which withdrew its ads on Monday. At least 18 others followed suit Tuesday, including fellow automakers BMW, Lexus, Mitsubishi, and Hyundai, financial services company T. Rowe Price, Bayer, and Allstate, which issued a statement saying, "We are concerned about the issues surrounding the program, and we have suspended our advertising."
It's not exactly clear how big of a financial hit this advertising pullback will be. What we do know is that Bill O'Reilly's show pulls in hundreds of millions of dollars of ad revenues. Bill O'Reilly is really Fox News' top asset.
The network addressed the advertiser pullout, saying in a statement, "We value our partners and are working with them to address their current concerns about the O'Reilly Factor." But the company recently showed its faith in its anchor's future.
Fox News has extended its contract with Bill O'Reilly, and that happened even as the company was aware of these allegations and the settlements.
Well, the National Organization for Women is calling for O'Reilly to be fired. He is defending himself, saying in a statement that he's vulnerable to lawsuits and that no one at Fox News has ever filed a complaint against him. At least one sponsor, Jenny Craig, is sticking with the show. Nora?
All right, Anna, thank you.
Ending this edition of One Saturday Morning is the end of a true pro wrestler. Mark Calloway, also known as The Undertaker, wrestled his last match for World Wrestling Entertainment at WrestleMania 33 here in Orlando. Now, note, throughout all his years in his matches, he has won 1,717 matches and lost 467 matches. If you add them up together, you have 2,275 matches that he's competed in at World Wrestling Entertainment. So here's a clip of him basically laying down his gloves, his coat, and his hat, and saying goodbye to the WWE Universe one more time. My name is Darrell Dukes. Thank you for watching One Saturday Morning. We're going to leave you with that clip, and until we meet again, stay gold.